When I was asked to be on this panel, I said I don't know anything about labor law in Spain or even in the United States, and I was told that Orly Ashenfelter would be here and he'd take care of it. I could talk about something else. So I do. I want to talk about not the recession we have now or your labor market issues, but an issue that all the OECD countries face now, and it's really quite striking, is this fiscal, there's something wrong with the fiscal policies in all the OECD countries. We're all running big deficits, not in moments of crisis or war or anything special, but just on a day-to-day basis. We're not willing we're spending more than we take in taxes. There's a kind of dishonesty in the way we're thinking about the government and the financing of government activities that is causing some trouble in more countries now than others, but it's going to be trouble for all of us sooner or later. So I'm thinking, what does economic theory have to say, have to contribute about fiscal policy, how it should be conducted, what are the principles that should be guiding it? And the first answer is sort of, well, we don't know enough. That's true, but we know a lot. And I'm just going to summarize what I think is kind of known and what I think is promising for taking us the rest of the way. For me, Frank Ramsey's 1920s analysis, Ramsey tried to analyze for a given level of government purchases of goods and services, what's the best way to levy taxes to finance those services? Where taxes differ from, why do we care which taxes? The volume of taxes has to finance the spending. That's a given in Ramsey's analysis. But the particular way you tax different goods matters because some goods are sensitive to the tax incentives and some aren't. And so it matters how you spread your taxes around the different taxable goods. And this has been the basis for my teaching in fiscal policy since I was a graduate student. But we're now in a situation, and have been for most of a century, where a huge part, maybe not the largest part of government spending has to do with transfers, with social insurance or redistribution, things that have nothing to do with financing a given level of government spending. It's just outside the Ramsey setting. It doesn't have anything to say about. Ramsey had nothing to say about transfer payments. Now, you could say, well, look, all we have to know is from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, and we can move the spending power around as any way we like. And at some point, I used to believe this, and it's a nice slogan, isn't it? I mean, you don't want to say from each according to his need, to each according to his ability. But the problem is, of course, that people are going to overstate their need and understate their ability. And you can't tell by looking at somebody or auditing them what their situation is. And so Jim Merles in 1971 was the first person I know of to face this issue and try and model, okay, what would you do, what would a tax authority do, or could it do, taking into account of the fact that people are going to hide their abilities and hide their needs. And it completely transformed the way we're thinking about the effects of taxes, especially taxes involving transfers or redistribution. And I told Jim this morning, some of my students describe themselves as Merlesians now. I mean, it's a way, and the mechanism design that Hurwitz and Meyerson and Maskin got their prize for is kind of a general development of how you allocate resources when some of the information that you care about is hidden from view, and people have incentives not to reveal it. And this mechanism design is starting to work on issues of the welfare state. When I first saw mechanism design, I thought we were going to have a total theory of the welfare state in a year. But it turns out to be hard going for reasons that I'm not really, maybe nobody understands. There's a nice paper on unemployment insurance by Hoppenheim and Nicolini in the 90s, where they applied this issue to unemployment insurance. And why do we need a government for unemployment insurance? Exactly because you have to trust people to tell you when they can't find a job, and you know, you can't trust them. So you're not going to, private insurance companies are not going to insure you for unemployment risk, but there's a big risk out there. Do people have to live with this risk? Well, no, they don't. The mechanism of design kind of trades off these issues. So you set up an unemployment scheme which has the property, if you say you're unemployed, but then we have to debit you or downgrade you down the road somewhere. Otherwise, everybody's going to say they're unemployed and take their benefits. So you've got, and these guys worked out a model of this sort. I'm going to talk about one more paper that two students from Minnesota, Mike Golosoff and Oleg Savinsky, did an analysis of the U.S. disability policy. Disability insurance is a big deal in the United States. There's a lot of people on it, and a lot of the disabilities are things that we can't doctors can't diagnose. Lower back pain and stress are too big. Well, people really do have lower back pains, and they really do have incapacitated mental problems. It is a risk, and it's a risk that we would like to be able, the private sector is not going to do it. We'd like to have a government program to do it. On the other hand, anybody, and you see a lot of people in their 50s who are waiting for their Social Security to start. Why wait 10 years when I can claim lower back pain and retire right now? So again, how would an optimum planner deal with the disability issue? So Golosoff and Savinsky work out. The problem is not dissimilar to the one that Nicolini and Hoppenheim looked at, but they implement it. How would you? What kind of tax system would implement this? You're going to support people if they say they're disabled. Can't support them as well as they would if they were working full time, or everybody would claim disability. So you're going to reduce their consumption. Even so, do people still have an incentive, like my 55-year-old who's not disabled but just sick of working? You're still going to attract some of these guys. So Golosoff and Savinsky show that if you use a means test, so basically if you're going to claim disability insurance, you got to have below a certain level of assets. You could perfectly implement this mechanism design in that way. Now they apply it to the U.S. system, and it's a stretch to go from this pretty abstract model to the details of the U.S. disability system. So the people argue about whether they got it right or not, but they show, you know, that having a system that they would design is much better than having no system at all, but it's also much better and much cheaper than the system that we now have. Now I think something like this, as I say, this is a particular example, not a general theory, but some principle of means testing where we can cut back on these entitlements and these promises that we make to people, focus on getting the money to people who are in real distress. I get a $2,000 check from the Social Security system every month. You know, why? I'm not in distress. We don't have to redistribute. I'm not one of the people who's in need. We're wasting a huge amount of just moving money around from people who have it to people who also have it. I mean, there's room for cutting back on the spending side in this fiscal. There's certainly room for more taxes as well. I mean, there's always two ways to do it. But I think economists are getting closer every day to a redesign of the welfare systems that we have and want to keep having that will reduce the expense by huge amounts.